Howdy, folks. It's your friend Max Mogren reporting live for you from beautiful Alpine, Wyoming. This is Wake Up Wyoming. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We got a big show for you. It's Labor Day, a Monday, the 4th of September 2017, 1 week from 9/11, the anniversary of the greatest false flag attack of all time, perpetuated by the American government against the American people to justify the endless war on terror. But today is Labor Day, a day devoted to the working class here in America. So kudos to all of you out there busting your humps, working hard. It's important to note, labor unions, the labor movement is the reason why we have things like the 40-hour work week, overtime pay, weekends, things like this that our ancestors did not get to take for granted, and we shouldn't take them for granted either. So I hope you're really enjoying this Labor Day today. What's up, Zach Coons? What's up, Brian Peterson, Grant Davis? Thank you all for tuning in. I've been out of the loop for a couple days. I was down in Colorado living real life, getting away from the computer, getting away from the smartphone for a little while, having a lot of fun, I must admit. My friend Max, another Max, and I went down and climbed a big mountain called Long's Peak, the Diamond Route on Long's Peak. Had a lot of fun with that. Also went down and picked up a vehicle that a friend had lent out to a family during the evacuation from Standing Rock when the police raided and bulldozed the camp. It was time to get that vehicle back. So I caught a ride down there to Denver, climbed that mountain with my buddy, and then brought that truck back here, hoping to fix it up and sell it. Doing stuff in the real world, like really getting out there and trying to have fun, enjoy my life. I encourage all of you to do the same. Can't stress it enough. It's important to be aware. It's important to be informed. But if all we do is sit in front of the computers and analyze the news and try to make sense of it, it's going to make us miserable. I've learned that lesson the hard way. It's so important these days to find the balance. On Labor Day, find the balance between work and play, the balance between family, friends, fun, and activism, right? It's tricky, but we all need to do that in our own way. So I encourage all of you to stay active, stay aware, stay hopeful as you can given the world today. But also, thanks for being here. If it wasn't for you on your smartphones, your computers, I wouldn't have an audience. And I certainly appreciate all of you tuning in. Let's get into the show today. Hurricane Irma expected to make landfall around Florida in a week. The governor of Florida has already preemptively declared a state of emergency via Twitter. So just heads up to everybody in Florida. Here at Wake Up News, we warned you about Harvey several days before it happened, and we're doing the same. Hopefully Irma turns out to sea and isn't a problem. Elizabeth Patterson chiming in from Florida. Elizabeth, we wish you the best, you and all yours down there in Florida. It's a beautiful state. And who knows what's going to happen with Irma? Well, some people probably know because, as many of you know, the weather has been geoengineered for quite some time here on planet Earth. All the way back in the 1960s, the U.S. government was using the weather as a weapon. Operation Popeye during the Vietnam War. The Project Storm Fury was designed to study how to steer, weaken, and strengthen hurricanes. It makes you wonder why the mainstream media never talks about weather modification, never talks about the clandestine, covert weather modification programs when they're talking about these big hurricanes doing massive damage, right? The Reconstruction budget for Harvey looking to be about $180 billion. Now we see the federal government, well, they're going to have to pass the debt ceiling. They're going to have to raise the debt ceiling from $19.9 trillion to God knows what, because of Harvey reconstruction efforts, right? If Irma hits, the technology exists to steer hurricanes. The technology exists to weaken hurricanes. The military-industrial complex developed these technologies and has had them for a very long time, which prompts the question, why are these mega hurricanes happening? Why did Houston experience the most record-breaking rainfall of all time in the United States with over 50 inches of rain reported in some areas, right? Crazy. Meanwhile, as we worry about these storms down in the hurricane belt, here in the West, we got this huge drought. The whole West is burning, okay? Out front of my house here in Alpine, Wyoming, I can't even see the mountains around me. It is so smoky. Missoula, Montana, the mountains around the city are burning. Huge fires in Los Angeles, fires all over the place. It's a real bummer, especially when you consider that we have weather modification technology that could be used to put fires out, right? So stressful. Moving along, what else do I got in the headlines today? Cryptocurrencies getting walloped today. If you're in the crypto market, obviously a lot of volatility there. Keep a close eye on it. I don't really support cryptocurrencies. It seems like kind of a new way to speculate and gamble in the stock market. But at the same time, maybe it's still a solution. Maybe it's a Trojan horse. I don't really know. I got my beans, I got my bullets, I got my bullion, and I've been dabbling with the cryptos a bit too because you know what? Free money. The government prints more every day. If you can get it, maybe get it while the getting's good. I don't know. But today is not a good day to be getting it in the cryptocurrency markets. Double-digit percentage losses across the board in the big numbers like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin. Basically, I checked CoinGecko. 57 of the top 60 cryptocurrencies are getting hit hard today with double-digit losses. Some currencies dropping by as much as 50% in 24 hours. So if you're playing the crypto markets, keep your eye on the ball. That's all I can say to you. I'm going to look into that and try to figure out why they're getting hit so hard. It could be legislation. It could be who knows what. But the cryptocurrencies are taking a hit today. Today, as usual, we're looking at the Jackson Hole Daily. Okay, this paper services the wealthiest county in North America per capita. A lot of billionaires and multimillionaires hide their money here so they don't have to pay state income tax. It's also a beautiful place, playground for the wealthy and folks like me who just enjoy the mountains. So let's get right into it. The big news here locally, local intersection, more development here in Jackson Hole. A lot of people moved here because it was such a quaint, cute little mountain town, and now it's being Aspenified. It's getting all veiled up. It's the same sort of shit. Humans loving the places they love to death, it seems. Heartbreaking to see. But the most busy intersection in town, they're going to start construction there. Bison may roam at the Denver airport, okay? Kind of a tourist ploy out of the folks in Denver. Funny, I was in Denver yesterday picking up that truck from Standing Rock. But the key thing here, the Denver airport. If you've never checked out the Masonic symbolism or the creepy-ass murals at the Denver airport, take the time to Google that someday. Some people believe there's like a big military base under there. There's definitely some weird shit going on at the Denver airport. But the news there, they're going to have bison roaming near the runways so people can watch the bison from the road in the airport. Isn't that just great? Wonder what happens when they bust out of the fence and get onto the runways. Again, the veilification of Jackson Hole. Recently I was advocating for the building of a public water park, the river park, and people shot that down on the basis of it being, it bringing tourism to town, overdeveloping the valley, over-Disneyfication of the valley. But now here, it looks like the council is going to approve more developments at Snow King Mountain. After 2 years of debate, the town council is expected to decide Tuesday whether to support of Snow King Mountain Resort's request to begin an environmental impact study for Phase 2 of its mountain development plan. Phase 2 of Snow King plan includes a gondola to replace the summit chairlift, a 5,000 square foot restaurant atop the mountain, an observatory, a zip line, bike trails, and new ski terrain. So at the same time, people are worried about overdevelopment in Jackson. It's all about the almighty dollar. People want that money. It's heartbreaking to see the places we love being destroyed, being overdeveloped. But what can you do? More fluffity-duff news. In the opinion section, out of the mainstream here, the wealthiest paper per capita. Lovely. Joel Pertle, thank you so much for the link. CNBC reporting that China just made a huge move against cryptocurrencies. That would explain some of our losses today in the crypto markets, wouldn't it? Again, it's important to know these cryptocurrencies are going to be extremely volatile. You can make a lot of money with them, or you can get totally hosed. Governments and banks, the financial fraudsters, the global banking cartel, the central banks are threatened by cryptocurrencies. They're proposing creating their own cryptocurrencies. I read some headlines about that the other day. A bunch of big banks like HSBC, a few others in Europe, building their own cryptocurrency, right? So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with cryptos. But back to the regular, good old-fashioned American economy. Our buddy Robert Samuelson today telling us that the middle class is doing fine in America because according to a Gallup poll, a bunch of people consider themselves middle class. Of course, that's not necessarily true. You know, everybody likes to believe that they're doing all right. But the reality of it is that in the United States, the cost of living has increased substantially, much more than the 2% inflation the government reports, while wages have not grown anywhere near on pace, right? And here on Labor Day, it's especially important to note that. Coming out of Market Watch, we got a great little article today that millennials say anxiety about money is literally making them sick. I'm sure we all know that feeling. You know, even if you got a lot of money, you can make yourself sick stressing about it. But for the average American like ourselves, working multiple jobs just to squeak by, maybe save a few bucks at the end of the month, it's stressful as hell. And what happens if you get sick? What happens if a loved one gets sick? What happens if your car breaks down, right? 70% of Americans live in paycheck to paycheck. The middle class is not alive and well in this country. More than a quarter of millennials say financial stress affects their job performance, over twice the rate of the general population who feels that way, according to a study of more than 2,000 people released in August by insurance and financial planning company Northwestern Mutual. Financial anxiety also has made about a quarter of millennials feel physically ill, according to the study, and has made more than half feel depressed. Okay? We all know that feeling, right? Worrying about money sucks. You know, it's a system of control. Money can be very useful, but it's especially useful if you want to keep a bunch of people in line. For many millennials who came of age and entered the job market during the economic recession, the bad feelings are pervasive. Some 69% said they feel anxiety about their income, 67% said it was because of their level of savings, and 53% said it was because of worry about losing their job. Okay? That's the reality. The high cost of housing also presents challenges, and millennials have more student loan debt than any previous generation. Okay, I know that where I went to college, St. John's University in Minnesota, in the 13 years since I've been there, I'm 36 now. In the 13 years since I've been there, the tuition has more than doubled. Okay, it's damn near $50,000 a year to go to that school now, and I probably couldn't afford to go there now if I was a millennial. But I guess I'm a Gen Xer. I don't know. It goes on and on. Great article at Market Watch. Check it out if you feel so inclined. But we actually have a pretty good article from Robert Reich here today. I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. Robert Reich, guy that generally knows his shit, tells it like it is. But again, it's mainstream, so it's not going to the bottom of the situation, right? Jack Honey chiming in, student loans are robbery. I was robbed. No doubt. You know, it's funny here, Robert Reich. What's Robert Reich saying? Well, you got a college education is now a prerequisite for joining the middle class, but no longer a sure means for gaining ground once admitted to it, right? That's the nuts and bolts of it right there. Oh, you got to get a college education. You got to spend $10, $20, $30, $40, $50, $60,000 a year. Put yourself $40, $80, $120, $200,000 in debt, whatever it happens to be in your situation. And what happens? You get out of college and you're stuck tending bar or flipping burgers or sitting in a cubicle making, $30,000, $40,000 a year, not really getting you out of that hole that they put you into. But let's read Robert Reich's article because it's in the paper and it's decent. This will be the first Labor Day of the presidency of Donald Trump, who came to office riding a wave of anti-establishment anger from average working people. No one can say they didn't see it coming. But by the time Trump was elected, the typical American household had a net worth 14% lower than the typical household in 1984. The richest 1% controlled more wealth than the bottom 90%. Last year's annual Wall Street bonus pool alone was larger than the annual year-round earnings of all 3.3 million Americans working full-time at or below the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. You sure as shit can't shine on $7.25 an hour. Wall Street bonuses last year bigger than the total earnings for the 3.3 million Americans working full-time at minimum wage. While 90% of U.S. adults born in the early 40s were earning more than their parents by the time they reached their prime earning years, only half of adults born in the mid-80s are earning more than their parents in their prime earning years. Most also have less economic security than their parents, like the millennials and myself. Nearly 1 out of every 5 workers is a part-time job. 2/3 are living paycheck to paycheck. Most are working more hours than they worked decades ago and taking fewer sick days or vacations. The gap in life expectancy between the nation's most affluent and everyone else is also widening. Why? Because healthy food is too expensive for the average American to pay for, right? You want a loaf of GMO, glyphosate, bleached white bread, it's going to cost you $1. You want the organic stuff that's not going to kill you, it's going to cost you $5. Sorry, poor people, that's what you get. Increasing numbers of Americans are on the downward economic escalator and are succumbing to opioids, chronic liver cirrhosis, and poisonings that include drug overdoses. The standard explanation for why all of this has occurred is that most American workers are no longer worth as much as they were before digital technologies and globalization, so they must now settle for lower wages and less security. Rubbish. This doesn't explain why workers in other advanced economies facing similar forces haven't succumbed to such setbacks nearly as dramatically as have workers in the U.S., or why the pay of top execs at big firms has soared from an average of 20 times that of the typical worker in 1980 to almost 300 times the wage of a typical worker now. Or why the Wall Street denizens who in the 50s and 60s earned comparatively modest sums are now paid tens or hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And it can't account for the decline in the starting wages of recent college graduates. A college education is now a prerequisite for joining the middle class, but no longer a sure means for gaining ground once admitted to it. I know I said that already, but it's important to note. Again, if you put yourself $200,000 in debt, getting a college education, you're certainly not in the middle class. You got to work your way out of that hole. To attribute all of this to the impersonal workings of the market and to assume it's because most workers are not worth as much as before is to ignore the increasing ability of moneyed interests to alter the system for their own benefit, raising unions, turning full-time employees into contract workers, and monopolizing industry. America's economic and political elites could have used their growing clout to help workers get ahead through better schools and more affordable college, comprehensive job retraining, wage insurance, better public transportation, and expanded jobless benefits. They could have pushed for universal health insurance. They could have paid for all this by accepting, even lobbying for, higher taxes than themselves. It's important to note back in the heyday of America, the wealthiest Americans were paying something like 90% taxes. Now, granted, the government today sure is good at wasting money, so that might not necessarily solve the problem today. But, having everybody pay 30, 40% across the board, it's not fair. But they did the reverse. They spent more and more on their ever-growing wealth and power on rigging the game to their own advantage. As a result, trust in all the major institutions of our society has plummeted. In his first 7 months as president, Trump has done nothing for American workers. In fact, his attempt to undermine the Affordable Care Act, his retreat from the Labor Department rules lifting overtime pay, and his proposed tax cuts for the wealthy and big corporations will make most workers worse off. Happy Labor Day, America. But he's in office because of workers' anger and distrust. That's true. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. He said, their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. Tragically, Trump was right. Now all the rest of us are paying the price. Okay, Donald Trump, of course, went into the White House on the popular sentiment. He was going to go after the Federal Reserve. He was going to clear the swamp. He was going to do all this or drain the swamp, but not really. Okay, Donald Trump in the good old boys club. This is a Time magazine from 1989. This man may turn you green with envy or just turn you off. Flaunting it is the game, and Trump is the name. Ace of diamonds right there. Donnie Trump has been the mainstream establishment's flaunt it guy for a very long time, and they're all laughing right now. Actually, a pretty good political cartoon here today in the Jackson Hole Daily. We got this American guy, typically obese. He's got the free speech thing. And then we got this Antifa guy with his free speech baton with all the screws and things coming out of it. he's ready to bust some skulls, right? Interestingly, he's got the little throwing star there, which is also, what is that? That's the Star of David. Interestingly, Antifa, you know, we had the whole situation with Charlottesville. We got the KKK. Everybody hates them. We got Antifa. Everybody, you know, initially Antifa was cool, but now the mainstream media has turned on Antifa. They're calling it a terrorist organization. And in fact, it kind of is. You know, if you cover your face up and you go out on the street and you start beating on people, you're not anti-fascist. You're a fascist, right? But what's the news here? The FBI, DHS officially classify Antifa activities as domestic terrorist violence. That's coming from our friend Tyler Durden at Zero Hedge. Of course, Tyler Durden himself, a rather terrorist character in his own right. From Liberty Blitzkrieg, Antifa is playing right into the hands of the police state. Okay, can't stress it enough. If you want to protest something, if you want to, you know, if you want to go out there and make a difference in the world, putting a mask on and going out and beating up Nazis is not going to solve the problem. You know, write a letter to the editor of your local paper. Start sleeping with a reporter at the local paper and try to persuade them to write something that's actually true, right? Go protest the local bank. Go protest your local government. Go protest the Federal Reserve Bank in your town. But going and, you know, trading blows with the Nazis ain't gonna solve the problem. Again, Liberty Blitzkrieg, Antifa playing right into the hands of the burgeoning police state. Coming from Michael Krieger at Liberty Blitzkrieg. He's got a good quote here. Don't use words the government wants you to use. The government wants us to start calling each other terrorists. Don't do it, okay? I'm not calling Antifa terrorists. But I'm saying when you put a mask on, when you go out in the street with a baseball bat, wearing all black, playing the black bloc tactics, you're dehumanizing yourself. Okay, you're making yourself look like a terrorist. And that's what they want, right? They want all dissent to be marginalized. They want people who are open, awake, aware to all be associated with either the extreme alt-right or the extreme alt-left. But of course, most of us are kind of in the middle. Most of us who think for ourselves just realize, wow, there's a lot of fucked up things going on. There's a lot of people conspiring against the rest of us. There's all this environmental degradation. There's all these outdated technologies being invested in. We want to change the world for the better. And that doesn't involve going out in the streets and smashing skulls. Okay? Bobby Marley said it pretty good. If you want to win the revolution, you must win it with Rasta, because you can't win any other way. If you win with violence, you're going to fight again. Petition to label George Soros a domestic terrorist has 80,000 signatures. Speaking of Antifa, in less than 2 weeks, a WhiteHouse.gov petition demanding that billionaire investor George Soros be declared a domestic terrorist and that authorities seize his multi-billion-dollar fortune has garnered nearly enough signatures to force the Trump administration to issue a formal response. The petition, which has attracted 80,000 signatures so far, just 20,000 shy of the 100,000 it needs for the response to be required, accuses Soros of being guilty of sedition by financing groups that help support violent Antifa counter-protesters and other dangerous leftist groups. Last week, we reported that a similar petition, this one asking that President Donald Trump declare Antifa a terrorist group, had reached the threshold. The petition is still awaiting a formal response, but in one promising development, Politico reported today that the Department of Homeland Security has described the group's actions as domestic terrorist violence in private memos. Okay, I don't know why Zero Hedge thinks that's a positive thing, but the fact is, like, labeling any Americans terrorists is not a step in the right direction. All right, we got to control ourselves. The biggest terrorist organization on the planet is the military-industrial complex. It's the government itself. Terrorism is the rule through intimidation, fear, and force. Okay? The ones calling everybody else terrorists are the real terrorists. So let's get it straight. You know, don't call somebody a terrorist because you disagree with them, because the mainstream media, the government, is going to flip that on us so damn hard if we let them. Moving along. We're out of the opinion section. What do we got? What do we got? Fire forces evacuation at Glacier National Park. Again, the wildfires just raging around the West. Can't stress it enough. We have the technology to manipulate the weather. Okay, these storms, these hurricanes battering the Southeast, these wildfires raging in the West, it's all interconnected. People are playing God with the weather. We live in an era of weather warfare. I can't say exactly who's doing it because I don't know. I can't say exactly why because I don't understand the crazy motivations behind these people. But it's happening, and it's real. And the sooner you realize that, the more life will make sense. Here, this is good. World War II. Impact. The Army Air Force's confidential picture history of World War II. What do we see there in the sky? Well, it's a bunch of lingering, spreading airplane trails. Okay, the whole weather thing goes back a very, very, very long time. Of course, there are normal airplane contrails. There are also artificially induced clouds. Water vapor. Water itself is by far the most powerful greenhouse gas. Any conversation about climate change or environmentalism or anything to do with the weather and climate that doesn't address the planes leaving lingering, spreading trails, that doesn't address all of the wireless electromagnetic emitter stations like HARP and NEXRAD all over the world that seem to be zapping our atmosphere and affecting water's behavior in the atmosphere. Any discussion of weather and climate that doesn't address those factors is woefully inadequate. Okay, it's a clear and utter obfuscation of the truth, right? I don't know how serious CO2-driven climate change is, but I do know that human-caused climate change due to weather modification is huge, and it's happening right now. Moving on to the opioid epidemic in America. The lives of 46 people in Utah were likely saved during the first 6 months of the year by police officers who gave them a drug called naloxone, which reverses the effects of an opioid overdose, according to state data. The overdose victims were saved as part of a state-funded pilot program aimed at reducing high rates of opioid deaths in the state, the Salt Lake Tribune reported Thursday. Blah, blah, blah. You know, it's cool to see Utah investing money in saving the lives of its citizens from this horrible opioid epidemic. Where does all the opium come from? Well, it comes from Afghanistan. Who controls Afghanistan? That would be our dear friend Uncle Sam. How much opium is grown in Afghanistan? About 90% of the world's supply, right? Uncle Sam, the largest drug dealer and arms dealer in the world. The United States military, the military-industrial complex, the largest terrorist organization, the largest drug dealer. You know, it's a backwards-ass world. Thanks for all your comments and things. I haven't seen any for a while since Jack Honeys. Jack says, I would watch you if you had a TV program, better than a lot of the BS on TV and very entertaining. Jack, I do have a TV program. This is it right here. But this is not necessarily a program, right? You know why they call TV programs? Why they're programs on the television? It's because the television is designed to program your brain into thinking a certain way. In fact, all the way back in the 1940s when the television was created, the cathode ray tube, it was designed to emit beta waves. And beta waves are your brain's natural frequency that it resonates at when you're asleep, when you're dreaming, when you're in a trance, when you're hypnotized. And what happens when you're asleep and dreaming or in a trance or hypnotized? Well, you're very open to suggestion and you're not really thinking critically. So if you're sitting there, you know, back in the day they always told kids, don't sit too close to the TV, and you get the iconic image of the kid sitting there staring up at the TV like this, 2 feet away from the screen, getting totally blasted with beta waves. Now we live in the era of smart TVs, smartphones, smart appliances, smart meters. All this smart technology is designed to emit similar frequencies, like the beta waves on your television, designed to put you in a trance and fill your brain with a bunch of nonsense. I think my dad said it best, TV rots your brain. If you think I'm full of shit and I'm just making this stuff up, I strongly encourage you to read this book called The Body Electric, written by Robert O. Becker, MD, and Gary Selden in 1985, highlighting the impact of electromagnetism on the human body. Very fascinating stuff. Can't stress it enough. Enough with the little digression there. Moving on to Hurricane Harvey recovery, okay? It's a shit show down in Houston. Our hearts go out here at Wake Up News. Houston, we got your back. We would love to help any way we can. Let us know. I reached out to the famous rapper from Houston, K Reno. I'm hoping to interview him here on Wake Up News. If you're a fan of K Reno, go to his page and encourage him to contact us or to write us back, because we would love to interview him and get the underground hip-hop scene of Houston's perspective on this whole disaster down there. Another great book I highly recommend, The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein, written in 2007. It's 10 years old. Let it go. There it goes. Covers Hurricane Katrina recovery efforts, right? All the money that was, earmarked for Katrina recovery went to private contractors. A lot of it was misappropriated. A lot of it was misused. And a lot of poor people in New Orleans got kicked out of their houses, and the city was rebuilt for rich people, right? Probably something pretty similar going on in Houston right now. But we'll just have to wait and see how it pans out. Houston, on Sunday, authorities started a controlled burn of highly unstable chemical compounds at a Houston area chemical plant that flooded because of Hurricane Harvey. Utility crews went door to door to shut off power and warned those still at home in the western reaches of the metro area that more flooding is still possible. How they're going to open some dams because these reservoirs are full to the brim, and they're worried about more rain. The Harris County Fire Marshal's office said in a statement Sunday, the decision was made to take proactive measures to ignite the remaining trailers at the Arkema chemical plant in Crosby, Texas. The office said that doesn't pose any additional risk to the public. The 1.5-mile evacuation zone around the plant is still in place. I would venture to guess you don't want to breathe the smoke coming out of this plant. 6 of the trailers remained after 3 others ignited in recent days and sent thick black smoke and tall flames into the air. Arkema said Harvey's floodwaters engulfed the backup generators at the plant, knocking out the refrigeration necessary to keep the organic peroxides used in such products as plastics and paints from degrading and catching fire. At least 4,700 Houston dwellings were under new mandatory evacuation orders due to scheduled water releases at nearby dams, though about 300 people were thought to be refusing to leave. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers said the release was necessary to relieve the Attucks and Barker reservoirs from several feet of rain from Harvey, and to make room in case of more rainfall. So Mayor Sylvester Turner said anyone staying in already waterlogged homes was endangering themselves and first responders. Harvey is already blamed for at least 44 deaths. Floodwaters have also inundated at least 5 toxic waste Superfund sites around Houston, and some may be damaged, though Environmental Protection Agency officials have yet to assess the full extent of what occurred. Why, EPA? Please do your jobs and protect the American people. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said on CNN's State of the Union that the EPA is working on some of the sites already, but they have restraints on their ability to check out some of them just simply because of the water. Get a boat, EPA. Turner said Houston's drinking water hadn't been affected by the storm. Okay, Texas Governor, who's Turner? Turner, I think, is the mayor. Whoever it was, not the governor, I think it's the mayor, said their drinking water hadn't been affected by the storm, but added on Face the Nation, we would hope that the EPA would be on the ground now to take a look at those Superfund sites to make sure the contamination is contained and limited. My guess would be that the contamination is neither contained nor limited, right? If we had a functioning EPA, it's pretty easy to take some water samples, test them for all the toxic shit, and let the people know what's really going on. Of course, you read the paper, you don't get any of that. President Trump has asked Congress for a $7.9 billion payment toward Harvey relief and recovery efforts, a request expected to be swiftly approved when lawmakers return to work Tuesday. From what? The Congress August recess. I'm glad you guys had a nice month off, Congress. Great job defending America. Abbott called that a mere down payment and suggested the total cost of recovery could be as much as $180 billion. Abbott, the governor of Texas. Harvey brought 5 straight days of rain, totaling close to 52 inches in one location, the heaviest tropical downpour ever recorded in the continental U.S. Okay, if you know hurricanes, if you know storms, if you follow the weather like I do, I'm a sailor. I've sailed all over the west coast of the U.S. Hurricanes don't just sit in one spot and barf rain. You know, the eye of the storm right offshore, hovering in one spot for 5 days, dropping 52 inches of rain. This is a freakish, unnatural event. Okay, can't stress it enough. The technology exists to make storms weaker. The technology exists to steer storms. The technology exists to make storms stronger, right? If the U.S. government really wanted to decrease the impact of Harvey, they could have made it weaker. They could have pushed it out to sea, or they could have pushed it over land so it would have died quicker. Instead, it sure seemed like Harvey was just sitting in one spot, dumping all of its rain on Corpus Christi, Texas, and the surrounding area. Things that make you go, okay, North Korea, bunch of fluff. Don't worry about North Korea. It's a distraction. Okay, it's fear-mongering. It's terror porn. It's the mainstream media doing what it does best, which is making you worry about things that aren't a threat. North Korea is not going to nuke you or anybody else anytime soon. Although I can't say the same for Uncle Sam. Healthcare premiums, healthcare hikes. Okay, we were all suckered into the Obamacare program. Now what's happening? The prices are going through the roof. Here in Wyoming, the rates, the premiums for Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the only provider, are expected to go up by 48% this year. Nationwide, quite a bit as well. Millions of people who buy individual health insurance policies and get no financial help from the Affordable Care Act are bracing for another year of double-digit premium increases, and their frustration is boiling over. Some are expecting premiums for 2018 to rival a mortgage payment. The most exposed consumers tend to be, don't you hate it when they call us consumers? Like, we're human beings. Oh, you're a healthcare consumer? You consume healthcare plans? No, you're a human being that's forced to buy healthcare. Otherwise, you're going to get a tax burden, right? You're going to get penalized if you don't buy healthcare. But you're a consumer. You're not a human. You're a consumer. The most exposed consumers tend to be middle-class people who don't qualify for the law's income-based subsidies. They include early retirees, skilled tradespeople, musicians, self-employed professionals, business owners, and people such as Sharon Thornton, whose small employer doesn't provide health insurance. We're caught in the middle-class loophole with no help, said Thornton, a hairdresser from Newark, Delaware. So she's a hairdresser, not making big bucks probably. She said she's currently paying about $740 a month in premiums and expects her monthly bill next year to be around $1,000, a 35% increase. If people such as Thornton drop out, they not only gamble with their own health, their departure also means the group left behind gets costlier to cover as healthier customers bail out. That's counter to the whole idea of insurance, which involves pooling risk. But it wasn't supposed to be this way. Blah, blah, blah. But an influx of sicker-than-expected customers drove up costs for insurers, while many younger, healthier people stayed on the sidelines. Political opposition from Republicans complicated matters by gumming up the law's internal financial stabilizers for insurers. The result was a 25% average increase in the price of a mid-level plan on healthcare.gov heading into this year. Many states expect a similar scenario for 2018, but this time insurers say uncertainty about the Trump administration's intentions is driving up their bid ahead of the November 1st start of open enrollment. Okay, it's not people's fault that healthcare is so expensive. It's not the fact that healthy people are opting out while sick people are buying in. The problem is the whole system is rigged, okay? The government didn't need to create Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act or Trump Care or whatever. We didn't need to create this whole giant bureaucracy in order to get health care in line in this country. All we would have to do, all the government would have to do if they really wanted to make health care affordable for Americans, is trim the fat, is legislate against the insurance companies, legislate against the pharmaceutical industry, legislate against the medical mafia, right? Legislate against the pill pushers, force hospitals to list their prices up front, right? You go buy a car, you buy a loaf of bread, you buy a bottle of water, whatever the hell you buy, you know the price in advance. But you go to the hospital because you're bleeding out of your left lung, you don't know shit. Next thing you know, you got a bill in the mail for $50K, okay? It's a scam. Healthcare in the United States, absurdly, 20% of GDP. The average developed Western country, it's more like 9.9%. Okay, our healthcare costs double as a percentage of GDP compared to the rest of the world. Why? Well, it props up the economy. It makes it look like America's doing great, right? It's just like the real estate markets. All the big banks, they got all this free money they're getting from the Federal Reserve. They buy up all these empty houses. You know, the big mortgage crisis. Real estate prices are at all-time record highs. Property taxes are at all-time record highs. Rents are at all-time record highs. And then we have this huge glut of empty bank-owned houses. Okay? It's a fraud. It's a scam. Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, a scam as well. And what do? Once they got everybody in there, once they say, hey, you're forced to buy this shit, you know, take it, like it, love it. This is your health care. Who cares if you got a $7,000 deductible? Who cares if you pay $1,000 a month? Because you're stuck with it now, America. And that's the way it works. So we got to change that shit. I don't know how, but we do. One idea that I've been kicking around for a long time is direct democracy. You know, the problem with representative democracy is a few people are so easy to buy out, so easy to manipulate. Plus, who would really want to be a politician in the world today? Who would really want to, you have to be crazy to want to be the president of the United States. You have to be crazy to want to be in Congress and deal with all that shit. And what do we have? We have a bunch of psychopaths, a bunch of pathological personalities. Read The Mask of Sanity if you've never read it. I got to get a copy of that to read you some choice excerpts. But pathological personalities in the halls of power, right? We don't need representative democracy because we don't live in the era of the horse and buggy anymore. We don't live in the era of the handwritten letter. Everybody has a computer in their pocket. So it'd be very easy to vote on the issues directly, direct democracy. That would also encourage people to get involved, get engaged in the process, inform themselves. And then if we made a bad decision, well, it's on us for our collective stupidity. But we're neither here nor there. Moving along, we got a lot of fluff, we got a lot of hoo-ha, we got a lot of nada. Again, blistering heat waves, sparks blazes across the west. A guy tried to jump in the fire at Burning Man and died. Not the brightest ball in the bunch there. And moving on to one of our headlines there, can't stress it enough. Harvey Reconstruction redefines debt ceiling debate. Washington, AP, business section. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin said Sunday he called on Congress to combine a $7.9 billion disaster relief package for those affected by Harvey with an increase in the nation's borrowing limit, saying it's time to put politics aside so storm victims in Texas can get the help they need. The president and I believe that it should be tied to the Harvey funding. Our first priority is to make sure that the state gets money, he said. It is critical. And to do that, we need to make sure we raise the debt limit. The government's cash reserves are running low because the debt limit has already been reached, and the Treasury Department is using various accounting measures to cover expenses. Shady. Mnuchin originally, why do they hire all these people whose names are totally unpronounceable? Mnuchin originally had said that Congress would need to raise the $19.9 trillion borrowing limit by September 29th to avoid a catastrophic default on the debt, allowing the government to continue borrowing money to pay bills like Social Security and interest. Interest to who? Interest to the private, profit-driven banking cartel that controls the United States dollar, the world's reserve currency, but perhaps not for long. But Sunday, he said that deadline had moved up due to unexpected new spending on Harvey. On Sunday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott described the federal aid package as an important initial down payment on Harvey relief that he expects will come to 150 to 180 billion. We need Congress to step up and pass this and help Texas rebuild. More than 430,000 households have registered for FEMA aid, according to the White House. Okay, so conveniently, you know, when an American gets diagnosed with cancer, it's good for the economy. When we drop a bomb with a drone on some poor people in Yemen or Somalia or any of the other countries we're waging these shadow proxy wars in, it's good for the economy. And it turns out when the entire city of Houston, the fourth largest city in the United States, is decimated by a giant hurricane, it's good for the economy. It also forces the government to raise the debt ceiling from $19.9 trillion. Of course, who is that money actually owed to? It's owed to central banks, be it the Bank of China, the Bank of the USA, the Federal Reserve, the World Bank, the IMF, whoever the money is owed to. They created it out of thin air. It's fiat currency, centrally controlled digital nonsense backed by no physical, tangible asset, right? Money's just paper. You can't take a $20 bill and eat it. You know, what's a $20 bill good for? You can wipe your ass with it. You could light it on fire to stay warm, but that's about, you could write a love letter on a $20 bill, but that's all it's worth. It's a piece of paper. So it's worth about as much as a crappy paper towel, right? Poor toilet paper. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but we live in a crazy-ass world. We're going to get into horoscopes at the end here. I know a lot of people like to get into the horoscopes with me. The paper, you know, not that informative. We got the weirdness. We got no funny comics. Of course, as always here in Jackson Hole, we got 6 pages of classifieds. Now that the summer tourist season is winding down, we only have 6 pages of job help wanted ads. But at the same time, you know, most of these jobs pay $10 to $20 an hour. Typical house rental in Jackson Hole, it's going to cost you at least $1,000 a bedroom. So how the hell are you going to afford that on $10 an hour, $15 an hour, $20 an hour? You're not. Jackson Hole, a microcosm of the macro problem where all the wealth is in the hands of a very small elite and the rest of us are just squeaking by. We got sports, 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 the greatest distraction of all time, bread and circuses. I'm done with the paper. Okay, well, I do got into horoscopes. Jerry Wallace says, please do Scorpio. You missed it last time. I will do Scorpio for you, Jerry. I'm going to have to dig that paper up in a minute. But I want to read you all a couple more headlines I got here on the smartphone right quick before we get into horoscopes. Cash-strapped Venezuela offers $5 million to Hurricane Harvey victims. The evil empire Venezuela offering $5 million to us. Venezuela is offering $5 million worth of Hurricane Harvey relief to the United States just days after the White House approved a new round of sanctions against Caracas, according to emerging reports. Citgo, a company barred from repatriating any profits back to Venezuela, will be providing the relief funds, according to an article in the Houston Chronicle. The company owns a 150,000 barrel a day refinery in Corpus Christi. Blah, blah, blah. Long story short, Venezuela, not as evil as the mainstream media would like you to believe. In fact, they're offering aid to the U.S., to the victims of Harvey, at the same time that the U.S. government has collapsed their currency, has sent them into this catastrophic situation where the average Venezuelan is literally starving because their money's not worth anything. And there's a reason for that, and it's sad. Here's another interesting thing. Well, the U.S., speaking of Harvey, the U.S. tapped 4.5 million barrels from the SPRO, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, for Harvey. Just a heads up there. On the same vein, you might want to know, what did Harvey do to the wind farms on the Texas coast? This is coming out of Wolf Street. You know, all these chemical plants making a huge mess. These oil refineries shut down. We got toxic sludge in the streets of Houston. The wind farms fared just fine. You know, these wind turbines are designed to withstand a hurricane. So the wind farms, they didn't really shut down, and they didn't spill any toxic chemicals. They just spun there and generated electricity. Down power lines was the biggest problem. Oil and gas state Texas is by far the largest wind power producer among U.S. states. I bet you didn't know that. With an installed capacity of 21,000 megawatts and with 5,400 megawatts under construction as of the end of 2016, Texas is well ahead of Iowa, Oklahoma, And well, in fourth place, green energy state, California. Just saying. So ironically, Texas, the big oil state, has the largest wind generating capacity. The wind turbines on the coast were fine. Interesting. Again, Hurricane Irma, while we're on the topic of Harvey, if you got friends in Florida, you're down in the southeast, keep an eye on Irma, okay? Maybe write your local paper in advance and say, hey, why aren't we using weather modification technologies to weaken this storm and steer it back out to over the Atlantic where it'll harmlessly dissipate? So watch out for Irma. It's coming. Out of our friends at Nikkei, the Asian Review, China sees new world order with oil benchmark backed by gold. This is September 1st. Yuan-denominated contract will let exporters circumvent the U.S. dollar. Okay, this has been coming for a long time. Important to keep an eye on that. Remember, the U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency because using gunpoint diplomacy, the U.S. has gone after every country that tried to sell its oil on the international market for anything less than or anything other than dollars, right? Gaddafi in Libya, Saddam in Iraq, they wanted to trade oil for gold. Instead, they were forced to take their currency, convert it into U.S. dollars, and then, the people who bought the oil from them were forced to take their currency, convert it into U.S. dollars, buy the oil from Iraq, buy the oil from Libya, and that's how it works, right? Well, might not work that way forever. And a fun headline today, antidepressants, well, I guess it's not that fun. Antidepressants found in fish brains in the Great Lakes region. This is coming from physicalscience.org. Human antidepressants are building up in the brains of bass, walleye, and several other fish common in the Great Lakes region, scientists say. Okay, phys.org news came out August 31st. So at least the fish are doing all right. It's important to note that all of us, there's pharmaceuticals in the water, there's frac chemicals. I put out a video a while ago called How to Survive Depopulation, 11 Simple, Affordable Suggestions. We've got it posted here at Wake Up News now, so take a look at it. It's also up on YouTube. It's my most viewed video of all time. I encourage all of you to check it out. If you care about your health, the health of your loved ones, I think it's pretty good advice. And the last headline today, how getting rid of my smartphone revolutionized my life. This is coming out of the independent.co.uk by Thomas Goulding, a kick-ass article. I held off getting a smartphone until Standing Rock when I had to. I felt compelled to do live streams there. That's when I started live streaming to begin with. Now I'm kind of stuck to the thing. I find this thing controlling my life, okay? In my own experience, the smartphone is an extremely powerful technology. As I touched on earlier today, even the earliest televisions, the earliest cathode ray tubes designed to emit beta waves, designed to put humans into a trance state so they're more prone to suggestion, passively consuming information and being programmed by their television programs, right? Now that we live in the era of the smart TV, the smart appliance, the smart meter, the smartphone, humans sure seem to be getting a lot stupider, and there's a reason for that. These devices are a cause of and remedy from the high anxiety, precarious life under late capitalism and are rewiring our brains to resemble computers. How long would you last doing a simple cognitive task without checking your smartphone or social media feed before you get fidgety and bored? 10 minutes? How would you feel after 1 hour? Around 2/3 of British people admit they would feel lost, unhappy, or anxious without their smartphone, according to a survey last year. Around half of Americans openly admit they simply could not last a day without their smartphone. Researchers are fairly successful uncovering the ocean of evidence that suggests living completely immersed in the information ecosystem of smartphone, internet, and social media feed, as billions of people do every day worldwide, is seriously detrimental to one's mental health and cognitive capacity. We lose the ability to deeply concentrate and contemplate. We have higher general levels of anxiety and emotional anesthesia. We struggle to retain memory in the same way, outsourcing this function to Google. Our minds are becoming more like automated data processing machines, drained of creative dynamism, and vibrancy. While the research grows, individuals and communities have been sharply feeling the effects for a decade now. In my daily life, when I had time to relax at the end of the day, I found existing inside my own thoughts and body, simply being, deeply uncomfortable. The constant existence on feeds and apps throughout the day, feeding my brain a steady stream of data, led to a pervasive feeling of restless unease without them. Goes on to talk about anxiety. This is a kick-ass article by Thomas Goulding, independent.co.uk. How getting rid of my smartphone revolutionized my life. And I'll tell you a little story here while I'm finding the horoscopes. I promise we'll get to horoscopes next. But here's a little story about smartphones. Okay, I just told y'all that I was away from the computer for a couple days because I was out there enjoying the real world. I was out there really doing real stuff in real time with real people. My buddy Max Kramer and I went and climbed the Diamond on Long's Peak. It's a big-ass mountain. It was a lot of fun. But I was relying on my smartphone, okay? I have a guidebook, and I took pictures of the pages that I would need. You know, it's a big trad climb. It's like 10 pitches, and it's this huge face. And you could get lost out there and end up going the wrong way, and, you know, it could go very poorly, right? Well, I was relying on my other smartphone to be our source of information for the day. And we got to we woke up at like 4 in the morning. Well, we hiked in the night before. We woke up at 4 in the morning and started hiking to the base of the mountain. And we got there. I whipped out my smartphone, turned it on. It didn't work, right? It would turn on, but the screen wouldn't light up. It would, might as well have been shooting sparks. I couldn't interact with the screen. I couldn't see anything. It was on, but it was unresponsive. And this was a real wake-up call to me on depending on the smartphone in a very real-life situation. So what did we do? Well, we just went and climbed the mountain without it. I'd been studying it the night before, and we just went for it, and we were okay. But relying on the smartphone put us in a bad situation that day. So I guess the point is we all got to find the balance there, okay? These are a mind-control device. These are a Trojan horse. Thomas Goulding here at The Independent is not really touching on the deeper issue, which is elucidated in a 32-year-old book written by the doctor who revolutionized electromedicine, the body electric, electromagnetism, and the foundation of life. Can't recommend this book enough. Specifically, the chapter Maxwell's Silver Hammer. Bang, 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 bang. Disturbing shit in the world today. But that's that. What can we do about it? Horoscopes. Again, I'm no astrologer, but people want their horoscopes read, so I'm going to get into it. Jerry Wallace wants Scorpio, Virgo, Aries, Cancer. Here we go. Okay. Sorry. Oh, it's going to cut me off at an hour, too. It might. I heard that I'm at 58 minutes. I heard they're cutting feeds at an hour, so I might not get to all your scopes. Scorpio first. 3-star. You will want to deal with a personal matter and root out the cause. You might be able to get past a problem that often triggers you. Understand what is motivating your reaction. Don't stand on ceremony if a misunderstanding occurs. Tonight, happiest close to home. Wake up news, Virgo, here we go. 4-star day. Again, I'm running out of time. Focus on the matter at hand and don't allow your mind to wander too far. You'll accomplish a lot with ease. A partner or a loved one gives you substantial feedback which will help you better relate to him or her. Tonight, listen carefully to what someone else shares. It might be me. Aries for Brian Peterson, what's up? We're going to get cut off here. 4-star day, Brian. Zero in on your priorities and assess how relevant each one is. Allow others to come to you. You have a lot to share. They have a lot to share. You might gain an unusual insight as a result. Your creativity seems to delight a child, new friend, or loved one. Tonight, stay focused on the present moment. What else do we need? I think we're going to get cut. Cancer, here we go. 5-star day for you, Cancer. Angie, thanks for tuning in. You'll see a situation differently after you have had an in-depth discussion about the issue at hand. You feel unusually secure with a roommate or family member. You might want more intensity from a particular relationship. Tonight, Angie, be a favorite person. Leo, Gemini. All right, here we go. We got 30 seconds. 4-star day, Leo. Others could be challenging. A smile and a kind comment might help someone get past his or her defensiveness. A partner's comment is likely to force you to revamp your ideas. Share your thoughts. Find out how grounded you are. Tonight, past endeavors come back in multiples. And Gemini, last one, they're going to cut me off at an hour. 5-star day. Take the opportunity to eye the long term and assess where you are heading. You could be overly tired and withdrawn. You might not be as sure of yourself as you'd like to be. Open up to conversations that force you to think and evaluate. Tonight, break past any limitations. And speaking of limitations, we've gone past an hour, so maybe we're not limited to an hour after all. Who else wants their scope led? Thank you all for tuning in. If I missed your scope, throw it in there now. Again, I can't stress it enough. Not all of your comments show up. It's extremely frustrating. I'll go back and watch these videos after the fact, and I'll see these great comments from people. Some people will comment 20 times throughout the video, and not a single one of those comments showed up for me in the live feed. It's extremely frustrating. At the same time, it's telling me that only 16 people have liked this video. I know that's not true at all. It's telling me there have been no shares. I know that's not true at all. So the point is, just like a lot of the rest of the world, Facebook is not exactly 100% upfront and supportive of the independent media. That's where we all come in, right? It's funny, you can share this video and probably won't get too many likes. Might get 1, might get 2. You can share a picture of a friggin' cheeseburger you ate for lunch and maybe 30 or 40 people will like it. But you share a video like this, it's not going to show up in too many people's feeds. So if you really want to get the message out, if you really think, wow, you know, my Aunt Bertha or my ex-boyfriend Randy or whoever the heck would really enjoy this video, send it to him in a message. You know, send it to him in an email because it's probably not going to show up in their newsfeed. Just a hunch there. That Survived the Population video I put out here on Wake Up News, it had hundreds of shares. Then when I click on it to look at all the shares, there might be 10 likes total out of 100 shares. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? But that's just the way it is. Karen J. Bowden, thanks for tuning in. Thank you all for tuning in today. Again, I can't stress it enough. We have to find that balance. We got to stay active. Okay, we're human beings. We're not meant to sit in front of the computer all day long, fiddling around with it. We're meant to be out interacting with our community, getting to know our neighbors, building these strong, resilient communities, right? I find, in my experience, it's pretty damn hard to make a living. It's pretty damn hard to make any money off the internet, cryptocurrencies aside. But today, not a good day for cryptocurrencies. But the point is, real life happens in the real world, okay? You can listen to this on your phone while you're walking down the street. You see a neighbor, you see a friend, stop, talk to them, interact with the people around you. This is where the real change happens, right? Of course, the internet's important too, but it's all about that balance. And it's all about awareness of the fact that these things are a Trojan horse, right? You can't sit there and be a slave to your phone all day long. It's even worse than being a slave to a job because you don't get paid to play with your phone. And like this guy in The Independent said, it rewires your brain. So turn it off, get outside, have some fun, get some exercise. Even if it's smoky out like this, you know, try to enjoy it because this is life. Make the best of it. You know, let's work together. We got this. I know the news is depressing as hell, but that's what it's designed to be, okay? The mainstream media is designed to depress us, to distract us, to deter us from going out there and affecting the small changes in our world that all cumulatively add up to a very big deal, okay? You know, we see it in our own lives every day. You know, focus on what you can do, and I'll do the same. And like I've said many times before, I certainly appreciate all of you tuning in today. Thanks for your likes, your comments, your shares, subscribing. Can't thank you enough. I'm Wordy. I'm signing off. I'm going to go live again tomorrow morning, and then I'm going back into the mountains because I practice what I preach. Thank you so much. It's your boy Max signing off from beautiful Alpine, Wyoming. One love. Peace.